Julie, how are you? Thanks for coming on the program today. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to do it. All right. So we've got a lot of stuff that I want to cover this afternoon, but you've got a piece at IWF right now called Eric Lipton's Attack on Dr. Nancy Beck is a call to conservative women. And as you and I were talking off here just a couple of minutes ago, I mean, it seems like if you are a conservative woman, right then there's already at least one strike against you, right? And there's already going to be folks that are out for you because you are an outspoken conservative woman. And apparently you're not allowed to be that anymore, whether it's, Dana Lash or Kellyanne Conway, who I know that IWF is going to be honoring here in just a couple of weeks. If you poke your head up, you're likely to get the whack-a-mole treatment as a conservative woman these days.
Yeah, it's true. You're sort of painted as a traitor to your sex. And we are so often conservative. I think this is really serious. Conservative women are so often in pop culture painted as kind of silly and dumb and, intimidated by men. You see this at the highest levels. Michelle Obama recently said, I think that conservative women or women who voted for Trump were pressured to do it by the men in their lives. I mean, how condescending is that I don't have the ability to make my own decisions, that it's just insane that I would believe in limited government and more economic freedom and lower taxes. These are perfectly acceptable economic beliefs to have, but apparently, according to Michelle Obama and many Democrats, that's only okay if you're a man. If you're a woman, you have to toe the party line. You have to be a Democrat. You have to be preferably liberal, preferably a radical feminist. That's really the only way to think if you're a woman. And so I find this very disturbing, but we're starting to see it in the mainstream press. Increasing attacks. And this piece by Eric Lipton, which was in the New York Times, he is their science writer, though you will find he has a pretty spotty record on science reporting. He did basically a hit piece on a scientist, a career scientist, who is now at the EPA. She heads up a very, very big and very important regulatory office within the EPA. She was appointed by President Trump, and she's hugely respected by her colleagues and basically in the scientific community. And that was what was so interesting about the article, is that he didn't really attack her, sort of personally. He didn't attack her career, or her ethics, or her record, but he attacked her simply because at one point she worked for the ACC, which is the American Chemistry Council, which is the trade association that represents chemical companies. What he doesn't seem to understand is people go in and out from big business to government agencies all the time because, in fact, many times people that work in industry know a lot about the regulatory process, know a lot about chemicals. And so it's a very natural thing to go in and out of that. But this reporter decided to attack her, and again, attack her ethics, suggest that she's at the agency just now to help out her buddies in industry. That's a very big charge. And I think it's pretty awful to just suggest that because at one point you might have worked for business, that automatically disqualifies you from government service. And also, there was repeated charges in Eric Lipton's piece that, she doesn't care if chemicals harm children and harm the environment. I mean, these are just outrageous allegations. And again, I think this has a little something to do with this is a woman. This is a very impressive woman. I mean, if you read the piece, he actually does include some compliments of her. She's a very impressive woman, and yet she's attacked, I think, in a way that is again, it's just outrageous, and it's totally inappropriate for them to smear her in this way.
Well, and as you say, the attack, he finds these colleagues who have great things to say about her. He can't attack her credentials.
Right.
So it has to be that sort of guilt by association, right? Well, that she worked for the chemical corporate, big chem, right? Look. Here's the thing, Julie. I don't spend. You know a lot more about the culture of alarmism when it comes to chemicals than I do, but I do know this: that if all of a sudden big chem disappeared and we had a chemical-free environment, a quote-unquote chemical-free environment, I'm pretty sure like would be going back to the dark ages.
Yeah.
You know, like I just
Yeah.
so I don't immediately get freaked out when I hear, she worked for the chemical industry.
Yeah.
Again, is she qualified? Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is she well respected? Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds
she
like
is.
it. So what's the issue here?
Yeah.
Other than here's a woman who is appointed by President Trump. And I think that's probably the real issue here, right? It's still
Right.
butthurt that it's not President Clinton, it's President Trump.
Right.
So, anybody that President Trump's going to appoint is going to get attacked, but she'll get attacked because A, she's the appointee, and B, by default she's a not by default, but she's a conservative as well.
Well, Eric Lipton, the reporter, also goes into the fact that he's that they're upset that there are actually some regulatory changes within the EPA, and I love this idea that why weren't Trump's regulatory practices just or Obama's regulatory practices just continued? I mean, there just seems to be I feel like saying you guys know that changes happen, right? When a new president comes in, they aren't obligated to continue the policies of the former president. I mean, I just feel like why is anybody shocked? But they seem startled that Trump has decided to manage the EPA in a different way. And one thing that
but it's not startled though. But again, it's they're butthurt.
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean,
I know. Yeah.
You quote Lipton because you say that he compares Dr. Beck to the woman who held Beck's position during the Obama administration, Wendy Cleland Hamnet, right? And said that she spent her entire 38-year career at the EPA, joining the agency directly from law school as a believer in consumer and environmental protections.
Right.
Now, whereas, most people would say, good God, a career bureaucrat spent 38 years
What is wrong with
away
her?
at the environmental protection agency, right? Like, wow, really? 38 years? Wow.
she must not have had better options.
I mean, as you say, like, we should build a statue to her, Julie. She should have at least a courtyard or a coffee shop or something. No,
Right.
something much more important than a coffee shop named after her. I mean, like, lauding this woman, right, for being a career civil servant. And if she did her job well, then God bless her.
Good job.
But, look, give Dr. Beck the chance. Maybe she won't do 38 years at the EPA, but give her the chance to do 4 or 8 years at the EPA.
Yeah, I mean,
and then look back and see how good a job
But
she did.
it was also interesting how he says, like, you can almost imagine as he's typing away, oh gosh, 38 years of the agency, a career bureaucrat, so wonderful. You can just see him like swooning about this. But then he talks about Dr. Beck's resume, just sort of ticks off that she went from industry back to government to industry to government. And it's sort of this idea that she's not a believer, right? She's had the nerve to go in and out of industry, and that makes her somehow tainted. But it was also interesting that he reports that that Nancy Beck and the former officer or person who held that office were sort of involved in a cat fight in the office, which I find so fascinating. Like and frankly, I find it sort of a sexist sort of charge that these women were fighting, and because this woman has nothing but very nice things to say about Nancy Beck. She disagrees with some of the policies that Nancy Beck is trying to put in place, but she says some very nice things about her, like she was downright intimidating because she had such a grasp of the scientific process. She asked very difficult questions. She demanded answers to her questions, and she demanded that the science upon which the regulation was being based was rigorous, met the scientific standards, was peer reviewed. She insisted that the regulations were based on good studies, not studies produced by Greenpeace or some other environmental group that the Obama administration was working with to put in place tougher regulations. So what's frustrating to me is what Dr. Beck is doing here is actually pro-science. Eric Lipton and some other of these anti-Trump activists are suggesting that this is pro-business. Fine, it might benefit business, but it's pro-science. She is returning the EPA to what it should be doing, and that is insisting that the science, again, upon which the regulations are based, is good science, not activist science. People need to remember that these regulations do cost jobs, and they do, in many cases, harm industry. So we need to make sure that they are based on the best available evidence and scientific studies.
Absolutely. All right, Julie, listen, before we run out of time here, it is Halloween. and you've got a piece at IWF.org on Halloween anxiety. Again, everything from is my child culturally appropriating
Right.
another for their Halloween costume to you've got the hashtag goodies not guns so that no toy guns are on display during the Halloween activities. Then there's the food fears. There was the story of a packet of methamphetamine that was found in Halloween candy on an Indian reservation in Wisconsin. Here in Farmville on Main Street, we actually have a Halloween parade this afternoon. My wife and kids will be here handing out candy. My youngest will be in the parade itself. Right? I mean, we still celebrate Halloween. And then, after that, there's an event in the town square, and then there'll be, trick-or-treat in the neighborhoods. But, are we... Because I'm not freaked out about Halloween. I'm just not. But it certainly seems like you talk about the culture of alarmism. There's certainly an attempt to get us freaked out about Halloween. How many people are buying into it, do you think?
I think the vast majority of people, just roll their eyes and have a drink, right? And say, just calm down, everybody, right? And let your kids overeat on candy and stay up too late and don't worry about it. But look, there is an industry out there, pearl clutchers and hand wringers, who make a lot of money off this type of stuff. I was mentioning the Non-GMO Project, who actually tweeted out, make sure all the candy your children received is non-GMO. I mean, let's just picture that for a second. Okay, little Timmy and little Susie come in the house. Come on, give me your bucket. You pour the bucket out, right? And before little Timmy and little Susie can have a Reese's peanut butter cup or pack of M&Ms, mommy has to go through with a looking glass and try to figure out, look for that non-GMO. What absurdity, and what person would do this? But there are some people who do this, and there are some people it still makes them nervous, and there are people who might not go to that extent, but they think in the back of their mind, is my child? They get nervous, and it takes away a little bit of the fun of the night. So, this article was just trying to tell people, look, ignore these professional alarmists, these professional agitators, and just have a good time. Again, let your kids eat a little too much candy. Let them go to bed late. It's one night. Everyone will recover in a week.
There you go. Julie Gunlock, great advice as always. Good talking with you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll talk again soon. Julie Gunlock from the Independent Women's Forum with us here on Cam & Company.